So the focus for today is learning and development, intellectual capital on which you can bank. Just to put this partly in context, Bill Gates recently talked about how intelligent agents, and this was not CIA, M15, etc., it was people with developed and developing intelligences are taking the information, obviously, and my mappers are taking the information democracy into the next stage. And the fact that using such learning software, learning and development software, you have a blank slate, a tabula rasa, on which the future can be written. Creativity is obviously one of the prime intellectual tools that is necessary to solve any problem, to deal with any crisis. And there are generic studies on creativity as one progresses through life. This will relate to you, to the people with whom you work, and also to your children. The studies take people at different age groups, give them problems to solve, and then analyze the speed at which they do it, the energy with which they approach it, the elegance with which they solve, the originality, etc. What percentage score on creativity do you think the psychometrist gave to kindergarten children? Say, estimate. 100%. 100%? 98. By the way, one of the characteristics of genius is taking risks, estimating, and guessing. If you guess, you put a stake in the ground. And if you are wrong, which you usually will be because you're guessing, it means you don't know, so you have to guess. If you are wrong, it's a shock. The correct answer shocks the brain, kind of, what? And the shock registers the new information. If in the rare instance you are correct when you guess, it's another shock. It's kind of, what? I'm a genius. So always guess. 95%. How many of you here have kindergarten-age children? Okay. How many of you have primary school? Percentage? 70, 80, 75. How many of you have secondary school children? Okay, percentage? 45, 50, 60, 50. How many of you in here went to university and graduated? Congratulations. And of course the adult. And the depressing thing about all this is that, number one, it's true. Number two, it's global. And it is therefore normal. It's normal. And thus the reason why Harvard Business Review said, looming global creativity crisis. And the creativity crisis is all around. That's the depressing news, but I do commend you to think about it because it is so. And it is happening in school, around the world, at this very moment, and your children probably, highly probably, are in that process. So that's the gloomy news. The very good news is that normal is not natural. This is not natural. It is normal. It is the result of the brain being given misinformation about how it functions. And therefore, it continues on an unnecessary decline. Let me give you a metaphor for that. As you know, I coach Olympic athletes. I want you to imagine you're an Olympic athlete and that you get stuck in a swamp. and that you believe that the way to get out is to use your Olympian energy. What will happen to you? You will sink. And you will sink how? Faster. And therein, as Shakespeare says, lies the rub. Therein is the essence of the dilemma. Because what it means is that the more educated you are, the more powerful you are, the stronger you are, the more dedicated and focused you are, the more kind, loving, and concerned and wonderful you are, the faster you go down the tubes. Because you put all that energy into exactly the opposite of what it is you really want. And my submission to you is that most of the information that our brains have been provided with in terms of their learning and in terms of their development has been that kind of information. And the studies demonstrate it. Is that good news or bad news? It's both. It's bad news historically. It's very good news futuristically, because it means we are at the point where we can now identify it. And we can work out what the normal is and why it is so, and what the natural is and how we can nurture that. The fact is that at every single day or minute of your life, your own creativity, your own intellectual powers, your own learning, your own development should have been accelerating from the time you were born, as it did with most of the great thinkers, the great survivors. This is a map, my map obviously, on creativity. It was done by someone trying to work out how to develop her own creativity. Again, the mind map doesn't need me to go all the way through it, but if anybody would like a copy, we'll be pleased to provide that for you after the conference. So, current use. How much are we using? And I'm doing this all in the context of the current situation. What percentage in terms of memory, learning, and creativity on average do we use? And we're talking here about the ability of the brain to remember and how much of that we use. The ability of the brain to generate ideas, and how many ideas does the average brain generate in a given situation. Roughly what percentage? 5, 8, 4, 2, 10, 20. Am I a bit? And you notice that all the bids are low. So there's a general global knowledge that we are somehow not using the resource, not mining it. We know it, and we who know it are in the field of it. And so it gives me great delight to say that you are all very optimistic. I want to go forward. I'm doing the same thing. Ticking underneath. Ta-da! It gives me great delight to say that you are all optimists. It is less than 1%. Is that good news or bad news? Both. It's both. You're quick today. Let me give you an example from memory, and I'm going to give you a little test on this. In 1994, psychologists from London University came to the 4th World Memory Championships, and they'd been working on things the brain could not do. In other words, Everests that would never, in the future history of the human race, be scaled. And one of the things they had tested was the ability to memorize a spoken number, spoken only once, and not allowed to be written or any other form of noted. So I'm going to give you the test. And what these psychologists predicted was that no human would ever remember a 30-digit long number spoken at 1 digit every 2 seconds and only spoken once. So I'm going to give you the test that they did, and I want you to do the test and feel it and think it. How does it feel to be doing what I'm asking you to do? So I'm going to ask you to remember the following numbers. First number, 3, 5. Okay, that's the number. How many can remember that? Off to a good start. Difficult or easy? Easy. And some of you are kind of laughing. It was laughably easy. Next number. 5, 3, 1, 0, 2. Okay, that's that number. How many can remember that? Good. Difficult or easy? Yeah, and it's interesting. People say easy. Which means it's just beginning to get worrisome. Next number. 7, 3, 2, 8, 9, 1, 0. That's that number. How many can remember that? Okay, difficult or easy? Yeah, beginning to get difficult. That was 7, which is where the average brain begins to wobble. Are these progressing in difficulty linearly or exponentially? Exponentially. So now you begin to understand why the psychologist said 30 never. It's thousands, tens of thousands, millions of times more difficult. Next number, and really focus. 4, 6, 5, 4, 1, 6, 8, 2, 7, 5, 9, 8, 1. That's that number. How many can remember that? None. That was only 13. Only 13. And so you imagine 30, and therefore impossible. In Bahrain, in the Gulf, last year, September the 2nd, 3 individuals memorized a spoken number, spoken twice as fast as I spoke it to you, 1 second per digit, of 100 digits long. And the man who won that subsection of the competition memorized a spoken number 202 digits long. And you say, no, impossible, because we have been taught that it's impossible, because we know it's impossible. But he did it. And just to make it even more galling for you, at the end of the competition, he had come second, but he had had to do 9 other competitions, memory tests as well. And at the champagne celebratory dinner, much as you're going to celebrate tonight, after 5 glasses of champagne, because he had broken the world record in that discipline, some mean-spirited individual said to him, "Can you still remember that spoken number?" And he paused for a moment, and he memorized the entire thing perfectly again. 5 hours and 5 glasses of champagne later. And at the end of it, he said, "Would you like me to do it again?" Backwards. And he did. And he did. So we know that the capacity of the brain in these areas, creativity, average results on a generation of ideas, tests for the use or application or associations of any object, most people run out before 20 ideas. With training, a well-trained brain can generate 24 ideas every minute until they drop. And then when they get up again, they can continue. So we know that this less than 1% is, in many instances, far less than 1%. So the good news on this is what?
There is room for improvement.
There is a small room for improvement. And who are the people that are going to be responsible for helping the brains of the planet realize that potential? You. The teachers, the parents, and those who are responsible for learning and development. The learning and development of what? The human being, the human brain. And when you go into this incredibly important field that we are all in, the potential for growth, i.e. development, is virtually infinite. It's a supreme privilege to be in the profession that you are actually in. And in times of crisis, it's needed even more. How do I go forward?
It's a question we're all asking ourselves.
Yes, that is the question, as Don says, that we are all asking ourselves. Yeah, that's what I'm doing, yeah. Okay. So let us look now then at revolutions of the mind. Because the thesis that I'm going to present to you today is that we are in a revolution. At this particular time, we are not in a recession. We're in a revolution. If we take from the time of the beginning of civilization, if any of you agree that civilization has ever begun, the first big revolution, the first big age was the agrarian, the agricultural. The next was the industrial. The agricultural gave birth to the industrial. I'd like you to just jot down on your note, what age do you think we're in now? Today, what age are we in? Just quickly jot it down. This is not discussion with your neighbor. This is just your impressions, your thought. Okay, and then quickly chat with your neighbor. But make it in groups of 3 or 4, just so you get a little mini survey. Excuse me. If you want to ever come up on stage, you may. Be totally free, wherever you want. Okay, group, let's survey. How many of you initially wrote down the information or the technology information age? Keep your hands up, keep your hands up. Look around. Look around, that's almost unanimous, right? The information technology age. Did anybody write down the knowledge age? Okay, a few. And how many had some other age? Okay, good. In the general surveys, information is virtually always unanimous, information technology. The other ones are kind of the depressive age, the age of regression, and so on and so forth. I'm going to give you what I hope will be information slogans almost in some way that you can put on your shield when you go into the battles that you'll be fighting during the next few months. The industrial age did give rise to the information age, The information age, however, which was thought to be the age, the information technological age, gave rise to its own massive problem, which was information what? Overload. Caused stress, all kinds of unnecessary failures and so on. So what was necessary within the information age was the organization of it, the control of it. And that gave rise to the knowledge age. Little mathematical error there, as many of you will have already noticed. The knowledge age gave rise to concepts such as knowledge management. How many of you have been involved in any way in knowledge management? Excellent. Knowledge management gave rise to the director of knowledge management. So in a number of companies around the world, there are directors of knowledge management sitting on the board. And when I was in Singapore recently, there was a meeting of the directors of knowledge management, and they were all saying, it's not working. It's not working. And it wasn't working, isn't working. And the reason why it isn't working is that there is something far more profoundly important to manage than knowledge. What is it that is more important to manage than knowledge? Quick chat in your discussion groups. What is it more important to manage than knowledge? All right, group, what is it more important to manage than knowledge? People, learning, time, power, thinking, creativity, intelligence. All, in fact, in the correct embrace. Because what we are doing now at the beginning of the 21st century, which is where we still are, is entering the next stage, the next age, the next revolution. It is the age of intelligence. We are now entering the age of intelligence. In the books on knowledge management, the books on information, they talk about the information worker, that your children will be information workers. The books on knowledge management talk about your child as going to be a knowledge worker. And I'm saying that is already historical. Each one of these revolutions stays with us. So it doesn't go when the next one comes. All these revolutions are with us in massive strength today. But they give birth to the next one. And the one we are in is this one. It is the age of intelligence, a very different age, which requires a very different perspective, a very different positioning, and a very profoundly deep and strong learning and development of those intelligences. You notice that I said intelligences. It's the multiple intelligences. It will no longer be good enough to have a first-class summa cum laude in one subject. It will be necessary that you have your mathematical, your verbal intelligences developed, and that you learn how to do that. But similarly, your social intelligence, your personal intelligence, your physical intelligence, your creative intelligence, etc. That is going to be the worker of the future, the laborer of the future. And those of us who are in charge of learning and development are in charge of those, are responsible for allowing all those to develop fundamental learning and learning how to learn. And let me just ask you to think back to your own academic career, from the time you started school to the time you graduated. How many hours in tens, hundreds, or thousands in your learning and development career, i.e. school, college, university, how many hours, tens, hundreds, thousands, did you spend learning about language and literature? Roughly, tens, hundreds, or thousands? Thousands. How many hours on mathematics and number? How many hours on all the sciences, biology, chemistry, zoology, geography, astronomy? And I commend you now to listen to the tone of the human brain discussing its relationship with the universes of knowledge. How many hours on language and literature? Thousands. How many hours on mathematics and number? Thousands. How many hours on all the sciences, zoology, biology, chemistry, astronomy, geography? Thousands. I mean, it's all so deadly dull, isn't it? It's so depressing. And it should have been, how many hours have you spent on mathematics and number? Ooh, about 7,925.328 recurring, and I can't wait for the next 10,000. So somewhere there has been a disconnect. How many hours in your formal academic career did you spend on the nature of your memory and the way in which it changes its rhythm of recall during a learning period, and how you can behave in order to enhance that? Zero. How many hours on the nature of the eye, its relationship to the occipital lobe, and how you can change the speed and comprehension of anything you read by will? Zero. And I could stand here and use up the rest of my precious hour with you by asking those questions. And it would have been 0, 0, 3, 5, 1, etc. So we have spent thousands of hours learning what? Stuff. In other words, learning what to learn, which is vitally important. What have we not spent thousands of hours learning? How to learn. How to learn. And which is most important? Which should come first? How to learn. And I submit to you that in learning and development, that is what it's all about. It's teaching, facilitating people to learn how to learn. Because once they can learn how to learn, with the potential we now know they have, they can learn what they need to learn 2, 5, 10, 20 times faster, with comprehensive recall and understanding, with the ability to relate it and to create from it and to solve problems with it. So we are now at that juncture. We are seeing, as I said before, the birth of a new age. The birth of a new age. As well as being the age of the multiple intelligences, it's the age of the management of the manager of knowledge. It's the age of the management of the manager of knowledge. And what is the manager of knowledge? This is not a difficult question. What is the manager of knowledge? The brain. So it's the management of our own brains. And if we don't manage them, if we don't know how to manage them, and we attempt to manage knowledge with a machine that we don't know how to manage, what will happen to our management of knowledge? We will mismanage knowledge. Obviously, if the machine is out of kilter, if it is not balanced, if it is not functioning as it is designed to function, it will malfunction. It will mismanage. And when it mismanages and fails, it will begin to think that it is stupid. Not that it has the wrong formula. Not that it is sinking into that swamp and not knowing what to do. Because with the wrong formula, everything it tries to do pushes it or sucks it, draws it farther into where it doesn't want to go. So the solutions are going to be pretty simple and pretty exciting to deal with. The prime asset of all, and I emphasize all business and all organizations, is intellectual capital. And you, to an individual, are intellectual capitalists in the best sense of that word. You are using yours to help other people use theirs. In times of crisis, historically, what are the first departments and budgets to be cut? Training. I mean, can you imagine anything more ridiculous? To cut your heartbeat in times of crisis. So what the better companies are now doing are actually investing more in training, in learning, in development, in a time of crisis. Because that's how you get out. I'm sure many of you have been reading the financial pages in the newspapers and magazines. What are the most common headline words in the financial pages over the last 4 months? Crunch, crisis, panic, fear, all those. And in times of crisis, panic. And bulls and bears stampeding all over the plains. When in times of crisis, you'll be pleased to know the greatest fortunes are made. Historically, it's recessions, depressions, crises, whatever, that the greatest fortunes are made. Made by whom? People who are thinkers, people who are creative, and in the Chinese concept of crisis, what are the two concepts that are the single concept crisis in China?
Danger and opportunity.
Yes, danger and opportunity. And both are true. So in the danger, there is the opportunity. The only people who can grasp the opportunity are those who are alert enough to see it, identify it, and then who can think and create ways in which that opportunity can be grasped. Can be grasped. How many ways can the human brain think of for solving problems? Many? How many? It is infinite. It is infinite. A Latin statement for you, which is one that I live by, and that is semper solutio. S-E-M-P-E-R. Solutio. S-O-L-U-T-I-O. UTIO, semper solutio, which means what? There is always a solution. So when you have that mental set, rather than being shocked and stunned by whatever happens, your immediate response is, there's a solution to that. That can be resolved. I've been fired. Oh, the end of the world. Not at all. I've been fired. Opportunity. What can I do with that? My friend's in trouble. Opportunity. What can I do with that? Company's losing money. Opportunity. How can I assist with that? So you keep the semper solutio alert button on in your head. Now is a time of opportunity. And what we are seeing is the development of the intellectual capital of which the currency is intelligence, the multiple intelligences. So your intelligence and your development of yourself is the prime capital at the moment, the prime currency. All the other currencies are going down. Oil going down. Stocks and shares going down. Housing going down. Property going down. Down, down, down. The one currency which never falls is intelligence, is what you are investing in yourself and what you are helping other people invest in. So we are seeing now, as I've said before, and I will repeat and build, a new age. So at this moment, you have the choice. You can buy and invest in all these things: gold bars, oil, stocks, shares, property, cars, stamps, antiques, to stop the tsunami of the recession. Or you can invest in your brain. And that is where you are investing now. You are investing in this conference. And I suggest you need to help everybody else invest. If this incredible piece of machinery, super machinery, beyond machinery, is operating well, your chances of survival are hundreds and thousands of times greater. Need we say more? And what you are seeing in the crisis, I believe, is the birth pangs. It's the birth pangs of the new age. Because what is everybody saying we need more of? We need more solutions. We need more good thinking. We need more creativity. We need more innovation. We need more compassion. We need more ethics. We need more, what they are all saying, many without knowing it, is we need more of the multiple intelligences, including the ethical spiritual. So we need more of it because it is now becoming apparent globally, for the first time in history, that the human brain is a miraculous instrument and that it can solve the problems. It can deal with it. And it can, in the future, produce the dreams and ideals of which we all dream, and I'm glad to see with you, daydream. And I repeat, it is the teachers, it is the human resource people, it is the trainers, it is the learning and development people who have the privilege of leading, of spearheading the beginning of this new age and this new revolution. And I'm talking obviously about you. All these cascading bankruptcies are caused by what? One big underlying bankruptcy. bankruptcy of thought. And the multiple intelligences and the learning and development of those will reduce that. Just a nice piece of news for you. This is from one of thousands of magazines that are now promoting the brain on the front cover. In 1991, the first time ever the brain appeared on the magazine front cover. That was Fortune magazine. This is the first magazine published by Scientific American because of the global pressure on them to give the readers more information on the brain. And the first issue was totally devoted to creativity. What is significant about this is not the creativity, but the red writing around it. Can you see that? It says, how brilliance arises, and then what? In every one of us. Not some of us. Not in her or him or those or them. But in every one of us. The first time science has said everyone is fundamentally brilliant. And therefore, if anyone is not manifesting brilliance, what does that mean? Yes, they haven't been guided into the right formulas. They are still taking linear notes in one color. How many of you in your own school and university, like me, took linear notes in one color? It's an epidemic. Was an epidemic. One color is a monotone. A monotone is a monotone and is therefore by definition monotonous, which is how we should pronounce the word, monotonous. Monotonous. What is the word we all use to describe something that is really monotonous? Boring. And let me ask you, ladies and gentlemen, what does your own personal brain do when it is bored? Daydreams, tunes out, switches off, shuts down, goes to sleep. And there you have a nice little thesis for why the world was in the situation it got itself into. Being tuned out, switched off, shut down by the very method that it thought it was using to help it learn and develop itself. So everyone is brilliant. And that means you. It means your children. It means the people you work with. It means the people in your organization who you are nurturing. And there is no question about it. With a normal brain, it is naturally brilliant, as the memory, creativity, and learning demonstration began to indicate. How many of you are familiar with the left-right brain, both research and metaphors? Okay, let me just use this new mind map software just to develop a mind map on the left and right brain, and then to ask you a couple of questions about it. In a mind map, by the way, for those of you who are not familiar with mind maps, you always have a central image, and then your main ideas branch out from it. So the left side of the brain, those are the mind mapped skills. Words, numbers, lines, lists, logic, analysis. Right side of the brain, what? Creativity, art, music. Let's have a look at what Roger Sperry, the researcher, found. Rhythm, color, shapes, maps, imagination, and daydreaming. A skill. So, what side of the brain is creativity? Right side of the brain. What side of the brain is music? Right side of the brain. What side of the brain is academia? Left. What side of the brain is kind of general day-to-day business? Oh, great one.
Maybe beyond my powers.
me ask you, or let me not ask you, let me just respond to your statements on those by saying that creativity is in the literature, the right side, music is, artistic is, etc., etc. But I'm going to say to you that your answers were wrong, 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 and wrong. And not only wrong, but dangerously into the swamp. Wrong. Chat in your groups and think about it. What side of the brain is creativity? This will change the way in which you approach all these things for the rest of your life. What side of the brain is business? What side of the brain is academia? Is music and art? Quick chat. What side of the brain?
Absolutely no idea what's happened. Two machines going out. You've got the ticket guy coming down. It looks to me like the battery's gone out.
Can't run out.
I have no idea what's happened. It looks like the machine's gone dead.
Can we bring it up on the other machine?
Well, let's bring it up on the other machine, but that means that we're not going to have the video of the brain cell. Because that's...
My climax.
Yes. Am I wrong, or is this machine... Right. That's the problem. Battery failure. Right?
Mm-hmm. I have 15 minutes, right?
Yes. Yes.
I'll do questions now, which is just about where I was going to get to.
I'm sorry about that.
No, it's always fun. If you can just get it up to the left of my brain again. Ah, here we are. Okay, group. On what side of the brain is music? Do I need to go on? But most importantly, what side of the brain is creativity? Both. And it is interesting, isn't it, that you unanimously said, pretty well unanimously, right, and then after a small group discussion, decided both. That's all it takes for a paradigm shift, which is what the world needs. Because the right side of the brain has been held up as this paragon of creativity. And it's only half the formula. So we've been using right side of the brain, quote unquote, cognitive skills to develop creativity and ignoring the left. Even downgrading the left. You know, the suits, the rigid, the boring, the dull, when it's not at all. If we have been using only one side in various areas, and I again commend you, think about your children in school, what percentage of the potential are we using if we're only using one side? It would seem like 50%, wouldn't it? But it's not 50%. If you say to me, Tony, run, and we're going to film you and check your efficiency. And so I run for 50 yards, and you say, jolly good, 90-95% efficiency. And then you say to me, we're going to ask you to do it with half your running potential. So we're going to tie your right hand to your right leg, and we want you to run again. What's the potential? 0.00. Look at the difference between this system as a potential power and that as a potential. Thousands of times more. And so it is with the human brain. If we use one side, we diminish the synergy of the phenomenal interactions that go on in the brain across the corpus callosum. So, we have the nice new perspective on the left and right module that it's synergetic. And each side communicates and multiplies the information of the other with a potential that is infinite. And no matter where you start to come into the brain from, if you come in from creativity, if you come in from neurophysiology, neurobiology, if you come in from memory, if you come in from the different modules of brain research, all the answers are pointing towards an infinite resource. And up until now, people have thought of the brain as a very limited resource, not particularly valuable. We spend more on a new computer in the company than on a new brain, whereas the brain is a super computer, a biocomputer. Let me ask you what language you speak in. What's your prime language? Just tell me, because I know there are different languages within this group. Your prime language. Dorset. What do you think my prime language is? English. And I'm going to say that my prime language is not English. And I'm going to ask you to do a little exercise to think about what your prime language really is. And again, this is a paradigm shift exercise. I'm going to ask you to imagine that you're a computer, you're a supercomputer, and you are going to access a piece of data that I'm going to give you. I want you to check how long it takes you to access it, what do you access, and are there any colors or associations in what you access? Are you ready for the piece of data? Piece of data I want you to access is Clinton. Okay, so check how long did it take you to access? What did you access? Were there any colors or associations? Quickly now compare with your partners. Okay, group. How long did it take you to access that? How long? Yeah. And every group around the world does the same thing. It's kind of just like that. Instantaneous, microsecond. Think about what that means you are saying. It means you are saying that from a fundamentally infinite database, you can access a randomly thrown at you piece of data that you've never heard before, just like that. Impossible. If you can explain how you did that, you will get a Nobel Prize just like that. And every brain can do that. How many of you accessed a little computer printout that said CLINTON dash? Nobody? So what did you access? How many of you accessed a picture or an image? Keep your hands up. Look around. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the human race. Because the language in which we speak is image and radiant associations. That's how we speak. That's how the baby learns. And when we say apple, someone else will say manzana, or la pomme, or pinguo. And the sound is simply a little cargo carrier that carries the same image between brains. So our prime communication language, the language on which the secondary languages like English, like Hindi, like Mandarin, like Australian Aboriginal, etc., all based on imagination and association, that is the human language. So we all speak the same language. And the subroutine, the second language, is how we convey that prime language to each other. And that, as you will see, and the left and right cortical skills area, is theoretical background, backup, support for what a mind map is. A mind map is simply based on the human language of imagination and association. And that is why it is a learning tool that can be applied like a Swiss Army knife to any area of mentation you wish. Bottom. Ta-da. A little review for you. And just to let you know that those of you who are mind mapping, which I was pleased to say is most, that's Al Gore in his study, from where he runs his global empire. And there's his mind map. The mind map is the tool he uses to control his grasp, if you like, of the situation. And it all comes down to this. This is the biocomputer chip. This is your brain cell. Each brain cell is independently and interdependently intelligent. And the number of thoughts that are available to this amazing piece of equipment, when combined with the million other brain cells, this is based on the research of Piotr Anokin at Moscow University. How many thoughts, he defined them as acts of intelligence, do you think there are engineering mathematic-wise available to the average human brain? Yeah, it used to be thought that it was 1 with 100 noughts after it, 10 to the power of 100. That was revised to 10 to the power of 800, which is the size of our known universe. Anokin said all those numbers are wrong. We now realize that even the number we have calculated by intense investigation is minimalist. He said the number of thoughts available to the average human is 1 followed by 10.5 million kilometers of typewritten zeros. He said, functionally, it is limitless. And that is why we in the university laboratory here, he said, accept no limits on the human brain. It is functionally limitless in its potential. So that's the main message. That and its million companions needs nurturing. And its learning and development, that is its prime food. And you are happily the ones who are responsible for that. We have time for 2 quick questions and then a closing comment.